program. It's a program that is actually meant to discuss and disseminate information about our civil society activity project, which is funded by UC. And this project is being implemented through the Development Alternative Incorporated, DAI, in partnership with CENTAL as subcontractor. So this project has been ongoing for 5 years. It's a 5 years project. We're in year three already, and there are a lot of things we've been doing in the education sector that we want to, unearth. We discussed and let the Liberian people know some of the issues we've been able to identify in the sector. Some of the work we've done to improve the system, and as well as challenges confronting the sector, and our ongoing research that we're doing called the alternative resource mobilization to fund education.
Mm. How long has that been going for?
Like I said, we in year three. We are the midpoint of the project. So the first year was like a foundational activities where we did a geopool survey. That was a random mobile text messages that went out to you know um, to people and asking them issues that concerning issues to them. Education stood out as one of the concerning issues. And after the geopool survey, we move on to what we call subnational consultation. The geopool were more of a mobile, a text message, but then the subnational consultation, we decided to engage stakeholders in the sector
Okay.
to re-identify the issue because unlike previous projects that just formulated from somewhere and is they bring it and say you implement, this was more different. It was more driven by the people driven project looking at the issues that confronting them.
Mm.
So the subnational consultation informed and it validated the geopool survey. Education was also a ranking and the issue that came up from the public. And then we did what we call political economic analysis. That was to go in depth into the issues that we identify and education. So we decided to meet stakeholders again, county education officer, district education officer, people that work in education, the Ministry of Education, teachers, students, assembling of different stakeholders through focus group discussion, through key formal interview, through special one-on-one conversation and observation, the different methods that we use, right? Looking at different contexts. And at that point, we got to realize indeed, education was a priority for the Liberian people. And that's how the project decided to focus on education as one of the core areas of the project.
With your involvement in into all of these things to ensure to identify some of the problems confronted the educational sector.
Hmm.
Basically, like, you spoke about
Geopool survey.
geopool survey that was done on the phone, right?
Yeah.
And you did in multinational
Subnational
the
consultation.
subnational consultation.
Yeah.
What did you gather? What were the samples that you actually gathered? Because you just spoke about politics. Many politicians or the school administrators, students as well, and school owners are heavily were like involved into politics in the center of all of their academic activities.
No, what I meant was what we call um, political economic analysis. It's a study. It's a framework that is used by UC to do wide range of assessment of a particular issue. And so that study was conducted, but a lot of issues, like you said, I would like to sum it into two. One of the issues that we saw is the funding challenge, and
Mon-
another, yeah, another issue has to do with quality related challenges.
when you talk about, let's take it bit by bit, funding challenge,
Yeah, uh,
to the institutions
to to
or
to the Ministry of
to the Ministry of
Education.
Education.
So a lot of the schools don't have supplies. A lot of the schools are having infrastructure problems.
Okay.
A lot of schools are you find out that they rely on the PTA, the Parent Teacher Association, to fund them. Some of them teacher shortage everywhere that you go. You don't find teachers in the classroom, and many of the teachers also now on payroll. You have also huge number of volunteer teachers. Some of them are not qualified. Some are qualified, but yet they are in this classroom. So poor condition of schools. Some of the schools you enter some places, you have students sitting on blocks, it's on benches, and the blackboards are not even visible enough for writing. I mean, a lot of problems. Some of the schools don't have befitting latrine or hand pump. You barely find some of them using pump water. Some of the open where they
You
drink it
see,
from.
you see the zinc over the building all
Yeah, the
finished.
roof or
Oh,
in makeshift and all of that. So these are some of the issues that we saw and that informed the project. And we came up with different core areas of the project. We started to look at the PTA, strengthening the PTA. So we also look at issues around what we call the school fee registration, and look at investigation, research and investigation into the school fee registration fees. And we also looking at the legal aspect of it, the education policy, how effective and they have been. We're talking about the Education Reform Act, the 2011 Education Reform Act, and how had that been implemented and by the Ministry of Education. So the issues were issues that came out from our different engagement, and so we decided to award grants and to a number of civil society organizations to work along with the project because so there were about nine civil society organizations that we on an education component that we awarded grants to,
in the
and
tune of what?
in the tune of around 70,000, and
US
and that is
dollars.
varies. Yeah, United States dollars, right? That varies, and in terms of and so some of them receive 70, some of them, a lot of them in that same bracket. All right, and they've been working hard. For example,
Did you confide in them? Did you trust? Did you have the trust in them that
of course,
they
they
will?
were vetted. They were called for application, what we term as RFA, request for application. They applied. There was pool of over 100 plus organizations that applied, and those that qualify are the ones that met the benchmark, the criteria.
Okay.
Yeah. So they have Integrity Watch. You also have Youth Movement for Collective Action. You have Institute for Policy Evaluation and Research. They qualify for the grant on monitoring and research investigation into the public school registration fees. Then you have the advocacy for PTA guidelines for school monitoring oversight. You also have Youth Movement for Collective Action. You have the Development Education Network. Then it'll also qualify under that component. You have the Institute for Research and Democratic Development, IREC. I also qualify under that component. And the third component was advocacy for establishment of regional CSO legal clinic assistance center. You have Institute for Democratic Action and Development, ADA. You have Survival Aid International, and you have Youth Coalition for Education in Liberia, USAID, that also qualify under that component.
Hmm. That's it's a whole huge list of integrity
Yeah,
institutions.
because the
Yeah.
project is a civil society project, so we bring a lot of civil society together working on this issue and the education issue to see how we can help improve the system.
But let's look at the adverse effect to what you do on a positive level.
Hmm.
How far are we with all of these of expenditures? You spend a huge sum of money, 70,000, to these institutions to help uh, do some of your works to ensure
Mm.
that the education sector is much better.
Yeah,
How far are we with the system now?
I can tell you we're doing pretty well. There have been a lot of improvements. There have been a lot of success stories coming. In many of the counties where PTA were dormant, where there were no proper establishment, they have been restructured, and they are now proactive. They are working with the school administrator, ensuring that they are part of decision making processes. They are also supporting, learning support, to the schools, and also following up on the kids learning. Because in the past, PT were more like, okay, we haven't gathered it. We want parents to pay.
Mhm.
We need stationery, or parents should pay to help get stationery in the school. But this time we're saying be part of that before that decision arrives. You be part of the process so that you get to know and see whether the issues that the school asking for is realistic, and how you can form part of that and know that they will see you as stakeholder, a partner in progress with them. Um, some of the schools are doing school feeding program. I know PT have been helping to provide, some, support for ingredients to get the students fair. All right. On the national level, we they have been doing budget advocacy, pushing for increment in the education budget to our
And
20%.
because the envelope, the education national envelope has not been too too
Yeah,
high.
yeah,
So
for over a decade, it has
mm,
not been. It has been very low.
yeah.
So they've been advocating. With like the last budget year, education received around 98 million, and this time around, through the advocacy of the different CSO that are working on education, there was some increment up to 105, and during the budget hearing, there was additional 3.3 million added, amounting to 109 million, to the education sector. In terms of percentage, now we moved from 11 point, I think, 9 to 14.8 now. Um, while it's true, there's the incremental increase. We appreciate that, but we stay below the benchmark, the
So
international benchmark set, as per the ancient 2015 declaration, which Liberia, is a member of that, and
from Abidjan.
the Abidjan Principle as well.
Mhm.
The Sustainable Development Goal 4, the Dakar Framework, all the different instruments that Liberia, part of, we have not been able to really reach them. We're lacking behind in all of these areas.
With the lack of effective financial contribution to the sector, now you've just started something to work with schools, work with the PTAs through some of your partners, and how how then do we expect the change that you are opting for to yield a greater result?
Well, this is why we've been more, we have been very innovative. We doing a research called alternative resource mobilization to fund education. We know that the fiscal space is tight, and the government envelope is very tight with a lot of spending priorities. And as a result of that, government have not been able to appropriate enough money to education. Um, I think there is a will, but because of the tight physical space, government have not been able to really appropriate a lot there. And it's like there's this cake, this small cake, and everybody wants to share from
Everybody.
the cake. And who takes a big, and the bigger share is the problem. So this is where our national envelope is.
But holistically, the people we will, like I always heard people say, education
Mhm.
should be of major priority to any country government,
Of
and
course,
and education and health.
of
So
course.
yes, so the calls that keep coming up for support to education, these calls must be laid to rest now
Well,
for greater result.
I hope so. I mean, I really hope so. But this is not the case. And like I said, the funding constraint, you cannot, put it aside. It's a serious challenge. That's why we're doing the research on alternative resource mobilization, to be able to look at other places how we can optimize, additional funding to education to complement what government is, allotting to the sector. So, consultant was hired. The research is ongoing, and we're almost at the point of conclusion of that study.
So who do you present your research report to? Your findings?
We're going to be presenting it to the various stakeholders in the sector. We're going to be presenting it to the government,
Do you
the
also?
Ministry of Education,
Mhm.
and we're going to be bringing policymakers from the national
Okay.
legislature, those on the budget committee, those on education committee, the Ministry of Finance. We're going to be asking them to be part of the presentation of the funding. As a matter of fact, we're going to be having a one-day policy dialogue to present the findings of the scoping study that is ongoing. So we're hoping that all stakeholders will be part of this process, wherein there will be presentations made highlighting the different issues, challenges in the sector,
Mm.
and the findings of the research and the different options that are proposing for alternative resource mobilization to be able to fund education. We want to pilot is something more like what you have like the roll fund and stuff like that, wherein um you buy gas and you make some contribution to road maintenance through the road fund. And so if we can have some funding set aside like that, to fund education, we think we're going to reach the 20% benchmark, and we're going to even exceed that. And our 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 whole process, we're looking for long-term sustainability, because we don't want we reach the 20% and tomorrow we flip again, we come back to 14, 13. We want to make sure that that is sustained and going forward.
Is CENTAL hopeful of meeting up with the perennial funding deficit in terms of living from that low stage to a greater to a higher stage in the next 4 5 years from now?
This is what we're anticipating. That's why the research is ongoing and looking at best practices that have happened in other countries,
The
and we
reason I'm
see how
asking
we
whether
can.
you are hopeful is whether your recommendations or your reports will be
Definitely,
will be granted, will be granted.
definitely, because I think the Ministry of Education will embrace the idea. We think government also will embrace the idea, because I mean, other countries in the sub-region are doing well in terms of education. They are far ahead of us. Some of them have reached the benchmark, and we are still lagging behind. We are trying to support government efforts, right, to reach the 20% benchmark and to meet up with other instruments that they sign up to. So this is why we think let's look outside of the box, because if for more than a decade now, but over 10 years, we see the funding deficit. You're not being able to appropriate enough funding to education, and with the tight fiscal space and the kind of the worsening economic condition that we see different issues happening that are affecting our economy. We think that looking outside of the box and it's important to be able to to fill the funding gap. That's why we
Looking outside the box,
yeah.
Mr. Makar.
um,
Also, as an institution, Center is Liberian owned, and you have foreign partners, you have international partners that you engage sometimes on some of these national training issues,
sure.
especially in the education sector.
Mhm.
What are the hopes from them? What are the aspirations they give you that yes, they can step in, they can help to push your agenda forward?
Well, to sustain funding to education, you don't want to rely that too much onto partners or foreign direct investment, because sometimes it will come in, sometimes it will not come in. Sometimes you get support, sometimes you wouldn't get support. But it's better to find a reliable source of funding, a domestic. That's what we call domestic resource
That's the
mobilization, right?
government. That's the,
Yeah,
yeah.
that can be rolling over and over and over, because with that, we think we'll be able to sustain funding to education. But if you want to rest that on the shoulder of
Mm.
foreign direct investment, it's not going to be sustainable. Even if you want to raise that on the shoulder for partners, it's not also going to be sustainable. So this is why government got to be firm, got to make some decisive decisions and actions to address the funding deficit towards education.
Because the last time I spoke with some one of our correspondents in the southeast, and he talked about, can you imagine at this rainy season you have two public high schools being
Mhm.
deroofed, and almost more than 2 weeks and nothing has been done Students are not going to school.
The problems are
So
enormous. The problems are enormous. I was in some of the counties. The infrastructure of schools are really, really bad. I mean, I was confronted by some media guys and they say, but Madam said in the past that the sector was a mess. I say, that's a harsh word to use. I think the sector is over the challenge. We need to work together to see how we can improve the system because trust me, the war had a really, really, and and devastating impact. And though the war is over, but the long-lasting effect of the war stayed there. The infrastructure of the school system was broken down completely, and to rebuild is a process. You need funding to do that, and this is where we asking, because of the tax fiscal space of the government, we're not being able to raise enough money to fund education. Why it's true, yes, the government have been trying, but we need to step up. You cannot have school system wherein one of the schools that I visited, students they go for the benches after church.
yeah, you carry right back after school.
Yeah, and carry to the
So,
school on Monday to Friday, and
oh,
then Friday
it's
after school they carry back to the church.
a primitive life we
And
still existing
that
here.
side,
So it's side.
there are some places where you go, you have from grades, first grade to sixth grade, you have maybe one or two teachers in the school. That's the workload is just huge. Can you imagine that? Some of the places that the children are sitting on blocks. Some of the places that one school will be counting people yearning to go to school, but no means because of the free education policy. Some of the news Kindle sometimes no Kindle, they don't go to school.
Hmm.
There are places that I mean it's terrible. Considering some of us who have traveled and seen and the infrastructure of school and system across other world countries, and you come back in your own country, it's really sad.
Side.
It's
And
yeah.
and are you also looking in this? And guess this is part of your your own social responsibility as a civil society or
Mhm,
institution.
mhm,
With all of these advocacies you do for institutions to benefit from central government,
mhm,
especially so the education ministry,
mhm,
with all of these calls you're making, and in the next budget year their salaries or their funding is increased to
mhm.
something that can help to improve the system around the country. And are you pushing to them that priority areas should be of key?
Of course, that's one of the things that
Yeah,
we push it because
because they will just have their own choices to make at the end of the day. Those places that are dilapidated, and they will not get the necessary funding to improve the system.
look, between 40 to 50% of allotment or um allocation to education is going towards recurring costs. That's basically salary. So you're talking about between 40 to 50% of the 109 million, between 40 to 50% going towards salaries. So that almost half of that money going to recurring costs. The remaining, you're talking about all the different conditions. We're talking about infrastructure, poor infrastructure, lack of supplies,
Yeah.
teacher shortage. You need to train teachers. You need to get all the different stationery to schools and armchairs and all of that. It might not even address them. In fact, many of the schools, some of them have not received supplies for years, and some of them say if they receive, it may be not adequate to run them, to carry them for the school year. So, I mean, to tell you that there is this huge budget deficit in to the education sector, that's why we're looking for alternative ways to address the problem because we think the national budget cannot do it all together. Looking at the trends, because we've been able to look at it over the last 6 years. We did a analysis of it. That's what I said. Over between 40 to 50%
50%.
on spent on salaries.
Do you have some success stories in your advocacy? And I know you will list a lot of them here, but just name few. In order what you do, what are some of the success stories?
Initially, like I said, we pushed for this increment the budget. We move up to at least 14%. We want to thank the government, but even though it's not still sufficient, and PTAs that was Doma, they are doing pretty well now.
across the country? Because
In the counties, in the project counties
you
that we
got
work in,
project counties.
6 counties. All
Yes.
right. That's Monserrado, that's Mikey B, that's Bone, Lo-Fi, Nima, and Grand Basso counties. So
What's wrong with the remaining counties?
sometimes it's based on the funding that you have, and these are counties that you say
You
give
say
some this unsteady around and giving so much priority to. So other counties are important, but they are doing other activities in those counties. So these counties were counties that we saw, that was capture on our project, based on assessment that we did. All
are you
right.
all have you are you also eyeing the registration fees in public schools?
The registration fee has been really serious concern among educational stakeholders. I mean, really those in school administrators, because they collect the fees from the students, and they send it to the Ministry of Education, and the Ministry of Education in turn send back share of that to the sending school, 40%. But most time that money is not going to them on time, and sometimes it's just not adequate to address the problems that the schools are faced with. And with the free education policy, there was a lot of there were a lot of students going to school. The enrollment ratio increased. But then it also put demand on schools to have teachers in the classroom. That's why you see the acute shortage of teachers, because if you have more students in school and you don't have teachers to present lessons to them, it's a problem. So, and another thing to that is a lot of the teachers too are rooming. So some of them are in the government schools, some of
In the
them
private,
two, three government schools, and they
they in
also
private
in
school.
private schools. So it's another thing. I think we have to give the teaching profession some decency, right? The same way you can have a content in an organization that making certain amount. I think we need to step and do something about that, to make sure the teaching profession is dignified to some extent, that teachers will not be roaming from
They would take something
because they
good,
want, yeah,
something good home at the end of the day.
yeah,
And you also spoke about your the improvement of the PDs
yeah,
in the six operating counters.
yeah.
Did you take into consideration their monitoring process?
Of course, they are monitoring. They are
Are they
monitoring.
properly monitoring?
Yeah, they are monitoring. Like in my GB, there's a school that was in makeshift. The PTA was able to work with them, improve that school. They have the school feeding program. They're supporting them. I mean, if you see the picture from where that school was and where it is now because of PTA involvement, I mean, you'll be amazed, right? Because PTA was very supportive and providing 100% support to the school in my GB. And there are other places also, that you see in Ima. We're seeing similar success story, coming up from there with the PTA involvement with the school system. So there are a lot more happening. We're just hoping that the Ministry of Education, with the issues we're flagging out, and we opening up for more collaboration with them to see how we can work together to address this issue, because knowing the issues and confronting them is something that we all want to work together. That's why we have all the different civil society in the sector working to ensure that we improve and the quality of education, and that will ultimately lead to improve learning outcomes.
What is the importance of this establishment of the regional CSOs, legal clinics, and assistance centers?
The importance is to get some education. They provide it's like a one-stop shop where they provide information around the different policy issue and educating um, educational stakeholders around the Education Reform Act, around the Local Government Act, around the Revenue Sharing Bill. All the different laws are laws that prioritize, the decentralization process. And this is one thing we also pushing for, to see how decentralization can be more effective across the country. Because take for instance, we the Ministry of Education, under the Education Reform Act, um, established the county school boards, right? The county school board were, they were operational at some point, and since then we're talking about 13 years now. There have not been nothing done to. They have not gone back to election. Some of them are dormant. Some of them, um, um, in some counties, they're not even existing anymore. And we asking what's wrong with that, because that was helping
Is it
to.
because of lack of interest?
I think something like that, and we think the need to restructure the education. I mean, the county school boards, because in that way you would devolve power. They would take some of the responsibilities. They would be able to help the schools. They would be able to help work with the county and district education officers. They will be able to work with the principals in those counties and be able to do more. And we also look at this school fee registration fees. I know issue. There were few number of schools who probably, when they transition from one leadership to another, some of them did not know that they needed to remit to the Ministry of Education. They used their funding to provide all the needed items that
For
they
their school.
wanted for the school. And you see the schools are doing better, right? So we think if the registration fee, if you can put them in the counties, restructure the county school boards, and allow them function, is going to improve, the system. But we're surprised that that is not happening. And we're hoping that this new administration will look into this and more carefully, to be able to assess the situation around the school fee registration, because it's
Is
raising a lot
is
of
is
concerns,
this
and
advocacy affecting both the private and the public,
it's
the
mainly with the
schools?
public
For
schools.
the public school.
It's mainly with the public school.
What's about the private school? Are they not of importance to the
They are,
process?
but the project is focusing on public school right
Well,
now,
are you
and
thinking?
a
Are you
lot of the public schools are more affordable, more accessible to marginalized communities, and many of our people who can really afford sending the kids to private schools, because private schools, I mean, come on, private schools, some of them more charge around $1,500 US, right?
but
Co-
some don't have the real facilities for
Yeah,
this. So
okay.
so they overly charge, but with very very I call
Poor
yeah,
infrastructure.
poor infrastructure, poor
That's why we
side
also
of it.
have to ask the Ministry of
Eh,
Education, because they give permit to schools,
mm.
right? So before you give permit, look at the infrastructure of the school, look at whether it's conducive for learning,
Whether the teachers are
whether they
qualified.
have good teachers, qualified teachers, that some of them, as per the Education Reform Act and education policy, you say CEB certificate. And because there's the issue with people who have bachelor's and master's degree, that quote unquote, they say you don't been into pedagogy training. So I'm also thinking that, well, with the shortage of teachers, if you think people went to got bachelor degree, got master's degree, and they have not gone through the pedagogy training, can you do some in-service training around that? Maybe for 1 month, to run them through the pedagogy, process, so that they know the different teaching methodologies to be able to use, to also have them in the classroom. So that these are ways you sometimes, address some of the problems, right?
Well, listeners, if you just joined us this morning, we are hosting Randall Makar. He's a senior program officer at the Center for Transparency and Accountability in Liberia, CENTAL. We are speaking about issues in the education radio program that they are running here in Liberia, 6 counties for now, and they want to see that the education sector is better. They are a civil society group and a very strong advocacy group. Center has been around for some times now, and they are doing excellently well. kudos to them, and kudos to the rest of the civil society organizations that are pushing their advocacies in the right direction for the betterment of Liberia. So yes, of course, you can now interact with Mr. Makar on 0776, and that's 077-597-8530, 077-597-8530, or 086 324740, 086 324740. You can call and be a part of the conversation this morning. Mr. McCall is right here with us. Hope that you can call and make your input from wherever you are. 0886 324740, 077-597-8530. He's my guest on the Super Morning Show this morning. Let me see if I can speak with this person. Oh, this person is gone. Let me see if I can talk to this next person. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
This is Alpha Balayan speaking from Jonathan, or calling from Jonathan.
Yes, Arthur, let's hear you.
Yeah, I want to commend your studio guests for the level of work they are doing for education. But I also want to agree with some of the things he said, especially when it comes to the issue of government school. There is no much regulation. So if the civil society organization can come in to help, because if the government is overwhelmed with the issue of regulation, to be able to monitor the public schools, especially when it comes to tuition payment and stuff like that, is a real issue in Liberia. So you see that almost everybody doing their own thing, and nobody is there to check me. So another thing he talked about the teachers' qualification. Actually, the issue of professional qualification is a problem in Liberia when it comes to the teaching industry. Many teachers have bachelor degree and so forth, but in different things. And the Ministry of Education and the Educational Act is saying that before you become a teacher, you should have a training. So they have academic qualification and professional qualification. You may have the academic degree, but you need a professional credential. So you could just go to any of the teacher training institutions and get your C, and get B or associate. I mean, you are qualified, but I mean, the ministry is saying even if you can have a master, you need the pedagogy, you need other things like classroom management, teaching, skill, testing, and evaluation. And before you can be a teacher, not because you are teaching at the University of Liberia, so you are a teacher. No, you are a lecturer at the University of Liberia, and you don't even have the teacher pedagogical knowledge. So you only have the content knowledge, and you are moving around saying you are a teacher. You are not a teacher. So we should be working around that. So the recommendation that we should be able to provide like training for them is necessary, but it's not just enough. Why can't we encourage them to go to any of the teacher training institutions like La Costa, like other teacher training institutions around here together, even a C?
Okay.
Yeah, so that's my contribution.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. 0886 324740, 077-597-8530. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Please go ahead quickly.
Yeah, I really enjoyed your presentation that Margot did. Moreover, I'm from Maryland. My name is Samuel Boma.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, moreover, this is the problem we have in our education center. Other people have the subject knowledge or subject content, but they are not really trained from the education center. So, moreover, education center need to notice that. And also, what we lacking up to as a Nigeria, we lacking of the monitoring system and also the supervising, because
or those from those teacher training to making the same mistake joining the people who are not trained. Because moreover, as a teacher, before you go to a class, you need to plan your lesson well and also know why you are going there for. For this time around, because lack of teacher and monitoring, teachers are not really planning their lesson. They only go to class present and also do what they know. So moreover, I recommend that the supervision team and also the monitoring team should be strong and also check those various schools.
Okay.
So that they can do those qualified teachers with the schools. Because moreover, lesson plan is the first thing. As a teacher, you need to know.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you so much from Maryland. Thank you. We can take two more, then Mr. Makar will just, but you can just address the two concerns while we can take maybe one or two, then we'll go.
Yeah, the issue of poor monitoring oversight is a concern that we also identify, during our assessment. And many of the CEOs and DEOs, confirm that. Some thanks to donors that gave them vehicles and motorbikes, but the issue about getting fuel and gasoline to get them out to the county, to the different parts of the county, is a challenge, right? Many of them complain and of their not having supplies that come into them. So, and sometimes when they do get supplies, they don't really, it's not enough to get away. And many of them even use their meager salaries to
even maintain the motorbike.
Yeah, to maintain the motorbike, and even buy fuel and gas to get them to where they want to go. And sometimes they are constrained. Some of them even made it clear. Some of them said they are practically the beggars, right? They have to be asking this person,
somebody
that person.
who is making a president, who is making a representative.
So they're doing a lot of sacrifice, man.
Let's take the last person, Mr. Makar. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Please go ahead. We don't have time. Good morning. Good morning. We can take one more, just one more person. Then Mr. Makar will.
Yeah, somebody also raised concern around the teacher's qualification. Yes. The act says you should be C certificate or B certificate holder to be in the classroom. That's the requirement. But like the others who also don't have that B or C certificate also in the classroom.
They're hustling.
They're also in the classroom. So what can you do to solve that problem? That's what we're thinking that there should be some in-service training for them, and to be able to go through the pedagogy training, to know the different methodologies, and to be in the classroom. All right. So that aspect, I think all the ministry can look at it more holistically and see what they can do to fix that, that problem. But on the overall, we think the challenges are enormous. We need to work together, the Ministry of Education, the different partners, the government, to see how we can prioritize education and put more money to the sector. Because if we don't do that, look, this country will face serious challenge in the near future. Because if our young children cannot get the quality of education they need, they will not be able to take on the leadership role tomorrow in this country. They will not be able to represent the country adequately. We need to put more attention to education, and especially so with the teaching and the learning process, making school conducive for learning. You cannot have schools where students are sitting on the bench and blocks, and the infrastructure so poor, the blackboard not visible, you cannot even see the writing clearly, and those who are going to teach, many of them not on salary, and most of the people also are volunteers, and they're being paid by PTA, and it's just so bad, completely bad, man.
Mr. Makar, finally, just 1 minute.
We look forward to working with when the findings of the research on alternative resource mobilization is out. We'll be reaching out to all of the stakeholders, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Finance, the the budget committee at the national legislature, the education committee also, and the different DEOs and CEOs. Many of them will be invited, and there will be a whole presentation about this. And we're hoping that we all this will general policy action to legislate something around alternative resource mobilization to fund education to be able to improve the education sector in this country.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, he's Mr. Randall Makar, the Senior Program Officer at Center for Transparency and Accountability in Liberia, CENTAL. He's been my guest on this program this morning. Of course, I just came in the middle of this presentation because this Friday is exclusively for Hassan Kiao. But Hassan will be back in just a moment and he will continue the program. My name is Melvin Stewart. Have a wonderful day.